Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us as we're just a couple minutes tardy here, as is the usual here at Biscuits and SEC. But we are Biscuits and SEC Live. It is Wednesday night, August 13th. We are getting really close here to the start of college football season. So I know all of you out there are excited. We are getting super excited here. Because we're getting close, that means it is prediction time. We started our predictions last week with win totals, as well as looking at a pivotal game for each team. And we'll do that again this week. We'll look here this week at Arkansas, Georgia, A&M, and Mizzou. And we also had some interesting news out of the SEC with John Mateer and some interesting things going on there, which we'll get into, and also some big news out of Tuscaloosa that we'll touch on as well. So glad to have you guys with us. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Hammer, how we doing?
Doing good. Yeah, as you said, getting close to the season. I'm excited. We've got more predictions today. And, what are we? I failed to put it in the newsletter this morning, but we are, 13, 14, 15 days from kickoff, something like that. Week 0, that is, with the Farmageddon somehow taking place in Ireland, well known for their, Midwestern farm country. But anyway, excited for the start of the season, and excited for the show tonight to get into more predictions so that ultimately we can be made fun of or proven right. I guess we'll see, but we're throwing it out there.
Definitely, no doubt about it. It'll go both ways. Some of these I think will be proven right, and others we are going to look like total fools. But that is how this goes in the prediction business here. Before we get into it tonight, sign up here for the Morning Biscuits newsletter. Go to biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter. Free to sign up. Everything that you need to know about what's going on in the SEC, everything you may have missed. We keep an eye on everything going on Twitter and the news, everything, so that you don't have to. Be sure to go ahead and sign up for that. I write it. Hammer writes it. We switch off depending on the week. During the offseason, in the offseason, it comes to you on Wednesdays. And then during the season, it comes to you on Mondays and Fridays because there's just so much news, injury reports, et cetera, flying around. So we're about to switch here, getting up soon to our 2 days a week cadence. So be ready for that. But we're hitting a lot of new subscribers here, so we hope that you guys will subscribe to it. And then later in the show, I will let you guys know one of the big readers from the national media, actually, who's been reading Biscuits and SEC for a long time, the Morning Biscuits newsletter. And we have a big announcement, so stay tuned for that a little bit later in the show. But all right, let's rock and roll, Hammer. We had a big news story pop yesterday on Twitter. I don't know exactly who it was that broke this story first. I was watching that SEC podcast with SEC Mike and cousin Shane earlier today, and they made it seem like it was one of those anonymous accounts, like a Richard G. West, who is an esteemed reporter on Twitter. So I actually don't know how this got broken, but it seemed to have a little bit of veracity. And we're talking about Venmogate here with old Blackjack John Mateer. So what was we love nicknames here at Biscuits and SEC, Boss Man and Hammer, obviously, and we try to. If there's a fun nickname out there, we're going to hit it. So he is now Blackjack John Mateer from now on.
I've heard Moneyline Mateer going around as well.
That's pretty good too. All right, so give me your take on this. What were your thoughts on it? And is John Mateer a criminal? And for how long is he going away?
So I did write the newsletter this morning. So I was looking into this. There's a big section in the newsletter. It was the lead story this morning. So I looked into this. I don't know who first broke it either. I do think it was kind of, maybe somewhere from the burner verse. This is not a wild opinion. I've heard most people, second this, but I don't think it's a big deal. I think it is pretty clear that these are jokes, bad jokes, certainly. Again, if you're playing college football and it's against the rules to gamble, probably not wise to make your Venmo transactions public where you're joking about gambling, but I think it's pretty clear they're a joke. And I also think that the reason I think they're very clear that they're a joke, first of all, is, nobody's that stupid. You can't be that stupid to put that out there legitimately. But second, I don't know if you saw the screenshots of some of his other Venmo transactions. One of them was, quote, turning gay. I think it's pretty clear. Several years ago, John Mateer and his friends were just sending out ridiculous taglines in their Venmo transactions. So he's got the evidence, I would say, to back it up. If you look around at his other transactions where it's like, hey, yeah, clearly I was not being serious here. And, I'm not actually gambling on USC versus UCLA or whatever the specific game that he had in the tagline was. That's my take on this. I do think, though, the only thing I will add is I think for Mateer and frankly anybody else in a similar position to him or that's thinking about transferring from a Wazoo-esque, G5-esque team into the SEC, like, welcome to the Thunderdome. Everything is going to be combed through. These people are nuts. Mike, so clearly a joke, but again, just hide your Venmo transactions, make them private, because people are going to find it if you are a QB1 in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it's almost like politics. It's a blood sport here, and everything's, like you said, everything's going to get combed through. Your old tweets from 2011. We remember that with like Kyler Murray and multiple other players now. And not only that, but you saw John Mateer, all this stuff comes out, and then everyone starts going and looking through, like, everyone went to their quarterback to see, oh, does Marcel Reed have his Venmo transactions public? Well, Arch Manning does, and Arch Manning's got some crazy stuff too.
I know.
So
Arch had some really crazy stuff.
He had some crazy stuff, and it was hilarious. I mean, I was cracking up looking at Arch's. And the other part, I saw somebody say this, and it was like, this is the differentiator between, you can tell the people that have friends, the people that don't have friends, and the people that have friends all look at this and laugh because they're looking at these transactions like, oh yeah, I've sent like 10 at least that are very similar to that. So here's the graphic. Blackjack John Mateer right there. His new calling card there is the Jack of Spades. So we're going to be using that, I think, throughout the season, especially if he starts balling out. But Blackjack John Mateer here, that is the one transaction there, that second one, the sports gambling. You mentioned it, UCLA versus USC, that has people kind of honing in like, if you're okay, we can probably get past it, the sports gambling, Flowers, etc., all the ridiculous ones that he was sending as well. But sports gambling, UCLA versus USC is pretty specific. So sounds like, according to Pete Thamel, he said that OU officials are looking into the situation after finding out about it late last night and plan to be proactive and exhaust every avenue. So, okay. And then you can see here the statement on the right there from John Mateer. The allegations that I once participated in sports gambling are false. My previous Venmo descriptions did not accurately portray the transactions in question, but were instead inside jokes between me and my friends. I have never bet on sports. I understand the seriousness of the matter, but recognize that taken out of context, those Venmo descriptions suggest otherwise. I can assure my teammates, coaches, and officials at the NCAA that I have not engaged in any sports gambling. Okay. I guess we take him at his word. I'm with you. I think nothing is going to come of this. I think it's all pretty ridiculous, and that he was just having fun with his friends. So I expect John Mateer to have a great year this year. I expect this to be a small bump in the road. But it is kind of annoying if the NCAA does open some stupid investigation, which is very possible here. They kind of have to. I don't see why they wouldn't, that it could hang over this team for, 3-4 weeks. Could it be 6 weeks? The NCAA is not known for acting in a quick manner. So hopefully this doesn't drag on. I put the Texas one down there. As we mentioned, Arch Manning's Venmo history. None of his included gambling. It was all just ridiculous stuff with his friends. So I think this is all to do about nothing, a big nothing burger. And but Venmogate will go down in SEC lore.
It will. As we said, from henceforth, everyone's Venmo history will be checked, and everyone who is a high-profile player in the SEC will be told by their coaches, make it private. Don't let anybody see it. Don't say anything stupid. It'll be treated just like any other social media thing, where I guarantee you all these staffs are telling their players, don't tweet dumb stuff. Don't say dumb stuff. Clear your history, whatever you have to do. But don't bring any of this attention onto yourself and our program. So, just add that to the checklist of things you have to be aware of if you're in the SEC.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, a couple days ago, I locked down my Venmo transaction history just because I'm sure I don't even know what's in there. It's pretty normal stuff, I think. But every once in a while, I was sending. If you're in a fantasy football league, you're sending some crazy stuff as a joke to your friends.
Yeah,
that's just. I think everybody knows that. So
I actually saw something funny too to close this out from the Arch and Texas perspective. So yeah, not only was his transactions screenshotted and shared, and there were some pretty ridiculous ones, but he apparently also, I guess, sort of similar to what happened with A&M and Jim Schlossnagle when Aggies found his Venmo and kept requesting money from him. Somebody requested Arch. It was like $50 or something, and he immediately denied it. So he was very aware that his Venmo was going viral, and immediately somebody requested like $50, and he just denied the request.
That is too funny. All right. Hopefully this gets behind John Mateer and the Sooners very soon. But one thing that is actually in front of the folks in Tuscaloosa, how about that for a segue? Getting better at them. Ty Simpson got the nod in T-Town. And according to Ryan Grubbs, it sounded like in his press conference, I wasn't able to watch it, but I heard a little bit come of it. He said it really wasn't particularly close, that Ty Simpson took the job. He won the job outright. So looking at it's pretty much been thought that Ty Simpson was going to be the starter. It was pretty much presumed throughout the offseason. Most of the folks you talked to around Tuscaloosa, our friends at Tide Talk Live, and Jake Thomas as well for Bama After Dark. I've heard from them. I've heard from others that Ty Simpson was expected to be the guy, and that people were hearing good things out of spring. People were hearing good things over the summer and then through fall camp. And now we see that he's the starter. So what is anything to add on that? Anything that you thought once Ty Simpson was named the starter?
Not a ton. I mean, as you said, we've been expecting this for a while. Not just from what we've been hearing out of spring and fall camp that it was Simpson's job, but as you and I have talked about on this show, the fact also that he did not transfer. And this cycle, at least, Kalen DeBoer did not bring in another transfer, right? So he did last year when he came from Washington. He brought his backup, Austin Mack. But this go around, he did not pursue anyone in the portal, meaning he was comfortable with what he had. So that felt like, if both sides are saying we're good to go here, that Simpson was going to be the guy, most likely. And honestly, just on that front, I'm excited to see him. You sort of forgot about him because he's been there for so long and really never played. Kind of a Garrett Nussmeier-esque story, right? Where he's been a name that you've heard of. He was a high-profile recruit, and I'm pretty sure this is his fourth year on campus, and he's essentially ridden the bench for 3 years. So I respect guys when they do that, when they sit the bench after being a 5-star. I mean, Simpson was a top 40 recruit. I mean, easily could have gone somewhere, gotten a payday. I guarantee you teams like, Kentucky, who's searching for a quarterback every year, have at least tried to reach out to Simpson, or guys like that. And obviously he wasn't interested. So that's the type of guy that I root for, somebody that bides their time and, does things the right way, I guess, if you want to say that. So, I mean, hopefully he does well. I think he probably will because, again, not only does he have the physical traits, he's been in the system, the current system for a couple of years. He's been on campus for going into his fourth year. But I also think that Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, maybe not Russell just since he's so raw and young, but Austin Mack is probably a pretty good quarterback in his own right. So the fact that Simpson's beating him out lends me to believe that he's probably very much ready to take on this job and is poised to have a good season.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that we've become so accustomed to, instant gratification, especially when it comes to a 5-star, right? I mean, I'm looking at Michigan this year with Bryce Underwood, and there are many, many examples, throughout the years of 5-stars who are expected to come in and contribute right now. And some of those guys do. A lot of those guys don't. And it's really good, I think, from a program perspective, when you can stack that sort of talent and then when those guys stay. And that is super rare in this era. And you mentioned one, Garrett Nussmeier, who did that at LSU, and he came out and had a really good year in his first year. Could have been a little better, obviously, but for the most part, he was in the upper echelon, of quarterbacks in the SEC. And folks in Tuscaloosa are expecting that out of Ty Simpson this year, having been in DeBoer's system now for 2 years, on campus for 4, as you mentioned. The only thing that gives me a little pause, and I made this graphic up here to talk through it for a second. He's been in 16 games, not started any of those. But passing, he's only thrown 60 passes total, 58% completion percentage, 381 yards total. Hasn't thrown a TD, hasn't thrown an INT. And then people don't sleep on his legs. He actually, in high school, he had 850 plus yards on 92 carries and 11 TDs in his senior year. So he can move a little bit. I wouldn't say he's Jalen Milroe necessarily, but I think he's going to be one of those guys that, if necessary, he's going to be able to scramble a little bit. But I think generally he's going to want to rely on his arm. And in high school, he threw for 2,827 yards, 41 TDs, 3 INTs his senior year. That's pretty dadgum good, and that's why he was a 5-star and the Tennessee Gatorade Player of the Year coming out of high school. So, you look back at some of his highlights and such, go on YouTube and check out his highlights from high school. The kid was slinging the rock. He was the second best player in Tennessee in that cycle, and he was the 3rd best QB in his class. So a lot of potential. Not all 5-stars make it. Not all 5-stars pan out. Blake Barnett, anyone. But there's a lot of hype around him at this point, a lot of optimism around him. And I even though there's a lot of unknowns here, I think it's justified. I don't think we'd be hearing from those coaches, hyping him up as much as they have. And also fans in Tuscaloosa, if there really wasn't something there that folks are seeing. So I'm excited to watch him, especially here in the first few weeks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So yeah, I think they're in a great position, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And I think, if he has a good year, likely won't change many people's minds. But I would love to see, if he has a good year, sort of him or a Nussmeier being example to younger players of, hey, you can stick it out for a couple of years. You don't have to transfer all the time or do the 3 years and done and go to the pros. Just if you're in a good spot in a good program such as Alabama or LSU, like, bide your time, wait your turn. Mac Jones did it. He became a first rounder, won a national title. So it can be done, even if you're a high profile recruit.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then just to check in, we did our Bama predictions last week. Both of us had Bama at 10-2. So we both have to believe in Ty Simpson enough to get them to 10 wins. And I think they're going to be able to do it. So you check to their schedule right out of the gate there. That's Florida State. Florida State's an old blue blood. I mean, okay, we know 2-10 last year. They weren't very good. Nobody really knows what they're going to look like this year. Thomas Castellanos, their quarterback from Boston College, has been talking a whole bunch of smoke.
Yeah.
So right out of the gate, you're going to have Ty Simpson and Thomas Castellanos being juxtaposed next to each other to see who's going to come out on top in that game. I personally believe it's going to be Alabama. I don't think FSU is going to be that good this year. But then you also have a Big Ten opponent in Wisconsin on September 13th. So he should have a couple decent tests, at least against Power 4 opponents in the first 3 weeks, which will be nice to see before you get Georgia there on September 27th when you have to go to Athens. But again, very nice too. You get a bye there on September 27th, September 20th, right before you got to go into Athens. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ty Simpson looks like here in the first few weeks. And I'm personally am excited to see it.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. It is, we got plenty of predictions to get to. So we wanted to just quickly get through the news of the week. But before we get to our big prediction segment, we are brought to you guys by the Steer Agency. Football is all about strategy, just like winning in business, whether you're dialing up the perfect play on Saturdays or looking to dominate in public affairs, PR, or digital marketing. You need a team that delivers results. That's where the Steer Agency comes in. They craft winning strategies that get you seen, heard, and ahead of the competition. Don't just play the game, control it. Visit thesteeragency.com today to take your brand to the next level. Okay, thank you to the Steer Agency for sponsoring tonight's show. If there are any of you out there who are interested in sponsoring either the Morning Biscuits newsletter or sponsoring Biscuits and SEC Live or a segment of the show, we would love to work with you, especially if you are within the SEC footprint. So be sure to reach out to us. You can DM us on Twitter, on Instagram, or you can also reach out to us, contact@biscuitsandsec.com to partner up with us. And we would love to talk with you. Okay. Last week, I mentioned it a little bit. We talked about Alabama. We talked South Carolina, Florida, and Auburn. I had South Carolina at 7-5. Hammer was a little bit, thinks they're going to be a little bit better than that. Hit 8-4, but take a step back from last year's 9-3 mark. Florida there, I've got them at 7-5. I think they're going to have a decent year this year, but that schedule is brutal. Hammer had them at 6-6. Bama 10-2. We both agree that they are likely to be in the SEC championship game. And then Auburn, I had them at 6-6. Probably going to be another tough year on the Plains, even though they are a little bit more talented. And Hammer had them at 7-5, thinking that talented roster is going to be able to help the Tigers break through going into 2025. So, okay, 16-16s. Arkansas. We are talking about the Hogs tonight. I just wanted to plug that real quick. I got the Arkansas 16-16 out on biscuitsandsec.com. You guys can go check that out right now. It is a deep dive, 30,000-foot view. Overall, look at the program. We look at NIL money. We look at facilities. We look at stadium improvements. We look at recruiting. And we also then look at what happened last year, what went right, what went wrong, and then what to expect going into this season and what it all means for the 2025 season. So I encourage everyone there to go give that a read. And now we can start right off with the Hogs. This is the Hogs 2025 schedule. A couple of potential trip-up games there. There's a lot of toss-up games, a lot of lean loss kind of there. Over-under is at 5.5. So these right here were our predictions. I've got the Hogs going 6-6. My pivotal game is the Memphis Tigers, and I'll explain why here in a minute. And then Hammer, you've got them at 5-7, which probably doesn't mean that Sam Pittman keeps his job. And your pivotal game there is Ole Miss. So I will let you start us off. Walk me through your thinking here with the Hogs at 5-7 and why their pivotal game is the Rebs.
Yeah. My 5-7, to take us back. So the over and under, I think on Arkansas, at least when we did our over and unders, was at 5.5, and I did go under. So with using that sort of as my guide, I kind of went through the schedule and looked over some things and said, all right, is there anything that has changed my opinion? Do I think that they'll actually get over that hump and get to a bowl game? And ultimately, I just couldn't come up with anything. I think, the turnover on Arkansas's roster is big time. The transfer portal, the guys they lost, the guys they brought in. I struggle with that blueprint, especially for a program like Arkansas. We've seen it work in some instances. Ole Miss has done quite well there. Florida State is a good example of it working great one year, terribly the next. A team like Arkansas, with the number of transfers they brought in, I have a hard time believing that that's going to drastically improve their team. Now, that said, and we talked about this on the over-under, I really do like Taylor Green. Mm-hmm. And they return a good amount of production on offense. I think it's 65% on offense. So I think the offense will be pretty good in year 2 under Petrino, but I definitely worry about the defense. And as is typical for Arkansas and anybody in the SEC, but Arkansas in particular, it seems like always gets shafted with the schedule. And give them credit for scheduling Notre Dame out of conference. But if I'm Hunter Yurachek, I'm not doing that, because you're fighting to get to a bowl game every year, fighting to win maybe 8 games, 9 on a good year. Yeah. Again, I love it as a fan, but if you're just trying to win ball games, then that is a tough thing to schedule. So it'll be a great atmosphere in September. I'm not saying Arkansas doesn't have a chance. I think they definitely do, especially depending on how the earlier slate goes. But that's tough when you have an at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, at LSU, at Texas, and then home against Missouri, SEC slate, and add in the runner-up from a year ago and what appears to be a consensus top 5 team to begin the year in the coaches and AP poll. That's a gauntlet. So I just looked at the schedule and I saw too many losses. In terms of the pivotal game, I did say Ole Miss just because it's early. And as we've talked about with Sam Pittman, the hot seat conversation is real. And, you know, if this team really stubs their toes early, and even if they beat Memphis, you know, but they lose to Ole Miss, lose to Notre Dame, lose to Tennessee, like I just don't really know, especially with all these transfers, sort of the hired guns, so to speak, what the buy-in will be if things start going south. So I really think that at Ole Miss game is pivotal just because, you know, not saying they need to win it, but they need to come out. And Ole Miss has plenty of questions too. So I don't think that game is you know, a guaranteed loss, which is why I put it there. I think Arkansas could win, but it's going to take a really good effort, and they're going to obviously surprise people if they do, but they have a chance to win it. It's on the road. They would start off the SEC 1-0 before traveling to Memphis. So I just think if they get blown out, things can turn south real quick, especially with a road trip to Memphis right after, which is not an easy G5 team, a weird road trip. So I think that is a pivotal game for them, at least to be competitive, keep it close, and kind of, you know, just keep that team together, believing in what their, you know, whatever their goals are. I'm sure they've been talking all offseason about them. If you go on your first road trip in week 3 and get the doors blown out, then a lot of that goes by the wayside. So I'm looking for a you know, competitive game there to at least kind of keep things rolling early in the season.
I had them at 6-6. I talked myself out of 7-5, by the way. And I looked at this schedule and I just thought, okay, yeah, Notre Dame is tough there. Memphis is tough in the out of conference. And it's a gauntlet of a schedule, no doubt about it, especially when you start the season off with 3 straight road games, two in the non-con and then 1 with Ole Miss. But, you know, I also did, because I did this deep dive, the 16-16, I looked at, they were close in multiple games last year, very close. They came close in the A&M game, right? They came close against Texas. They had 4 different games there where they were within just a couple of points, and they lost 4 games last year by an average of 7.25 points. So they were within a touchdown of a lot of teams. And the biggest problem that they had was they were turning the ball over at a ridiculous clip in those 4 games that they lost by, you know, whether it was 3, 4, 7, whatever it was. The Texas game was 10. Most of those games, they were either tied or had a lead in the fourth quarter, or in the Texas game, they were only down by 3. So they were close, even with all those transfers that they had come in and all the turnover on the roster and everything, all the new faces they were breaking in. Bobby Petrino took that offense from the hundreds to number 10 last year. They lost a lot in the wide receiver room. That's something I'm really worried about. And by the way, Arkansas fans, I'm sorry. Andrew Armstrong was a second-team All-SEC wide receiver last year, and I've been getting him confused with Desmond James. I don't know why. But Desmond James is the one who went off in the bowl game, and he's the one who's now at Cal. Andrew Armstrong is now in the NFL, as he should be. Isaac Tesla also in the NFL. And then Isaiah Satanga is now at Oklahoma. So they lost a lot in that wide receiver room, which is what I'm just a little bit worried, like who is Taylon Green going to throw to? Omega Blake looks really interesting. Started his career at South Carolina. Now he went to Charlotte, had a great year at Charlotte last year, had some great highlights, and now he's at Arkansas. So can he, you know, put together a solid SEC season? I just feel a little bit better about this Arkansas team. They need to convert on the defensive line. They lost a lot along the defensive line, but that defensive line was really good against the run last year. Pretty good against the run, I guess, is a better way to put it. Their problem was converting negative plays. They didn't have big sack numbers. They didn't have a lot of tackles for loss. They had one of the worst negative play rates in the country, even though they were good against the run. So they weren't getting a lot of pressure, which ended up putting a lot of pressure on the secondary. Secondary had a lot of passes defended, but the secondary gave up a lot of yards during last season. So they're going to have to shore that up. You also have 50 new faces on campus, 50 from the transfer portal to your recruiting class, over 50 new faces on campus. So going to be really difficult, but I like their coaching staff. I think Sam Pittman's a good coach. I think he's a good man. And I think that Bobby Petrino can flat out coach offense. I really don't care who is playing. Plug people in, whatever. Bobby Petrino is going to figure out a way to make those guys hum. So I talked myself out of 7-5. I think they go 6-6. Like you said, to pull up their schedule here one more time. Ole Miss is tough. That Memphis game right there on September 20th, going to Memphis. Don't overlook that game. That one to me is a big pivotal game because then you go into a stretch with Notre Dame, Tennessee, A&M, Auburn right after that. You can't lose that Memphis game. You could lose that Ole Miss game and then it's kind of okay. But if you lose that Memphis game right there, you're 2-2 most likely. And then you're going into the Notre Dame game. And then you're looking at a gauntlet and you're looking uphill to get to a winning record. And don't overlook Memphis because Memphis was 11-2 last year. They're still one of the best G5 teams. In fact, Phil Steele has them as 1 or 2 in terms of the G5 team who can make the playoff. They lost a lot. They lost 35 seniors last year, so they're replacing a lot. They also lost their 4-year starting quarterback. They got a solid kid in from Nevada to play quarterback for them. So they're replacing a lot. However, they got a daggum good coach, Ryan Silverfield, Hampton-Sydney graduate, by the way, 2003. Wow. He's the Memphis coach there, and he's done a very good job. So don't overlook that game. You cannot lose that game if you're the Hogs.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the A&M game is pivotal too because if they take care of business against Arkansas and we assume they lose the games that they're going to be underdogs in, which would be Ole Miss, Tennessee, Notre Dame, they're looking at they're 3-3, and then they have 3 consecutive home games beginning with A&M, and they're all winnable. A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, very winnable. So even if they are 3-3 coming out of that stretch, if they can get some momentum with A&M, and then carry that into Auburn and Mississippi State, we'll get to that at some point, but that is a very winnable game. Arkansas should win that game. So
yeah, there's
a lot of pivotal games here. One thing too, to add before we sort of close out on Arkansas, looking at kind of what we're talking about, the transfer portal, the guys that left, they lost their top 4 receivers, 6 of the top 7 defensive backs, and 5 of the top 6 defensive linemen. So a lot of guys need to be replaced. The only other thing I'll add is on the Taylon Green front, very special player. I expect him to have a good season. He's got to stay healthy. He got banged up a little bit last year. It's not really his fault, but he likes to run. He scrambles a lot. He extends plays, which is a great attribute to have as a quarterback. It just means you take more hits. And, he took some hits last year and was either out or not 100% in some games. So him staying healthy, I think, is pivotal, as any starting quarterback in the SEC is.
Definitely. They've got a couple kids behind him that are interesting, but they're young. So you definitely don't want to have one of those kids come in. KJ, what's his name? Not KJ Jefferson, KJ Jackson. And then Trevor Jackson. Trevor Jackson was a transfer from Florida State. So, but all that to say, you want Taylon Green to stay healthy. If you have to go to one of those kids, it's too early for those kids to be in the game and to really have to lead Arkansas through a major stretch of this schedule, right? You want to have Taylon Green starting every single game possible this season. So I am in agreement with you there. All right, let's get over to Georgia here. We also have the 16-16. Hammer wrote the 16-16 on the Georgia Bulldogs. If there's a Bulldog in this conference, I am going to find a picture of it, and that is what is going to be the header graphic for every one of these. For those who don't know, Boss Man, I'm a huge Bulldog. I just love Bulldogs. So any team that has a Bulldog mascot, I have a big affinity for, at least for their mascot. So the Georgia Bulldogs, 16-16, up now on biscuitsSEC.com. Go check out that 30,000-foot deep dive that Hammer did. All right, so this is the Georgia Bulldogs schedule for the 2025 season. Start out the year with Marshall, then you got Austin Peay there on September 6th. You get Tennessee. That is the real start of the season there on September 13th. You got to head to Knoxville to play the Vols. Then you get Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama back-to-back weeks. That's a little difficult, but the schedule overall sets up pretty nicely for Georgia. You get Alabama at home, which is nice. You also get Texas at home, which is great. You always get that neutral game against Florida, which is nice, that you don't have to go to the swamp every other year. And then also this year, a neutral site game against Georgia Tech, which is in Atlanta, but it's going to be at the Mercedes-Benz Dome. They put some, I don't know, corporate moniker on it to make a whole bunch more money.
Yeah.
But all that to say, this schedule, you also get Ole Miss at home this year, which is nice. So this schedule, for the most part, sets up in a nice way for Georgia this year. So drum roll, here is our predictions for Georgia for the 2025 season. I've got Georgia going 10-2. My pivotal game for the Dogs is Auburn. Hammer, you got them going 10-2. Your pivotal game is Tennessee. So I'll start us off here. I'll go back to the schedule here for a second. I look at the schedule. Like I said, I think it sets up very nicely for Georgia this year, especially with those Alabama and Texas games being at home. And I think Bulldogs.
Don't forget Marshall.
Yeah, I am overlooking Marshall there. That's my bad, Mike. Good point. But I'm pretty sure Marshall's replacing their entire team basically, because I think they all went to Southern Miss, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
But so I'm just higher on Gunnar Stockton than I think anybody else is. I don't know why he's getting this kind of meh, he's okay kind of thing. He was a very highly touted recruit coming out of high school. I thought he played very well in a tough situation in the SEC title game against Texas. They end up winning that game. They win the SEC title, and he was a big part of that. I think he wasn't all of that. Obviously, I think that the team kind of picked him up in that game to some degree. But then you go look at the Notre Dame game, and I've been harping on this. You go back and watch that playoff game against Notre Dame. He had a really good game. There was a lot of drops from his wide receivers in that game. This wide receiver room is now very much upgraded, in my opinion. I think most would agree with me on that. Noah Thomas coming from Texas A&M, Zachariah Branch coming over from USC. You got Oscar Delp coming back. I think this team is reloaded. I think they're restocked. I think this defense as well, people are also kind of like, this may not be the Georgia defense of old. Maybe not, but I look up and down that roster and I'm like, all these guys are 4 and 5 stars still. What is everybody worried about? I think they could be better than last year's defense. And last year's defense, saw a minor dip in some games, but they also were mean in multiple games, and they looked like the Dogs of old in a couple of games last year, especially I think about that Texas game in Austin early in the year when they really, socked it to the Longhorns in Austin in DKR. So I just look at this roster. I look at where it's at. I like the Bulldogs this year. I think that kind of crazy to say that people are sleeping on them, but I think they're a victim in a sense of their own success, which happens to a lot of teams. You think that Georgia is just going to be steamrolling guys, steamrolling teams. Everyone expects them to beat everybody by 20. And if they're not doing that, then, what's going on at Georgia, man? I don't know that they're going to be able to do that this year. I don't expect that from them this year. I think that NIL and the transfer portal has evened things out a little bit, and Georgia is one of the teams that is feeling the effects of that. But I still look at this roster, and I think that this is Georgia, man. They are really good, and I expect them to be at 10-2. I do think that it's tough to go through a season now and be undefeated, especially with all the transfers in and out and new faces and everything else, right? Also, this is a young team. Kirby Smart talked about it the other day. I believe 64%, or maybe it was 54%, something like that. People can check me on it. Is either freshmen or sophomores. So young team, gonna have to break them in. Those first couple of weeks with Marshall and Austin Peay should be nice to help those kids out, to get them some reps. But again, I look at the schedule here, sets up really nicely for them. And I just also, to close this out, Auburn there on October 11th is my pivotal game. Auburn is a little bit scary. That's in Jordan-Hare, probably going to be at night. And the Dogs tend to have trouble when they go to Jordan-Hare. So I look right there at that game, and I just think that Hugh Freeze might have a couple tricks up your sleeve, and maybe that's one where Auburn jumps up and gets you. So I don't think Georgia gets through this season without a blemish or two, but I think they're going to be right back there in the SEC title conversation. What are you thinking here on Georgia?
Yeah, pretty much lockstep. I think to try to keep it relatively short, I'm not worried at all about the defense. I know they, of course, they're replacing a lot of guys. I think they had 7 get drafted off of last year's defense, but there's a carousel of blue chip recruits. It's Kirby Smart. I trust that they will have a top 10 to 15 at worst level defense. So that's going to obviously help them win a lot of ball games and be in position to win. So to take it, to echo your sentiments on the offensive side, I do think Gunnar Stockton will be pretty good. I think the other thing I'm encouraged about, maybe not encouraged about, but just my belief is there that Georgia will be able to run the ball this year. They really struggled last year to run the ball. They were ranked 102nd in the country. And I just don't see that happening to Georgia 2 years in a row. They do have to replace 3 offensive linemen all in the interior. So both their tackles return. They've got, 3 newcomers that will be starting in the interior. So not an easy task, but obviously we're talking about blue chip kids here. So again, the talent is there. They just have to mesh. I don't see a scenario where Kirby Smart allows that to happen 2 years in a row. I can only imagine how much this has been drilled into their heads all offseason that we were soft last year and that will not happen again. So I expect them to be better on the ground. I also really like Nate Frazier. I know Trevor Etienne was not the issue last year. He's very talented and got everything he could on the ground. But I think Nate Frazier's a stud. I think he can be very good. And you mentioned the improvements they made to the wide receiver room. Georgia led the country in drops last year. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I like Noah Thomas. I like Zechariah Branch. I like Oscar Delp. And again,
also
Colby Young. Yeah. So yeah. I'm kind of with you. And you look at their schedule, as you said, it sets up much better than it did a year ago. You get all those games that were so brutal last year at home, right? With Texas at home, Ole Miss at home, Alabama at home. So yeah, I like this schedule. Of course, we have them going 10-2, so there's losable games here. You mentioned Auburn at Jordan-Hare. I think that's a very difficult game. Hugh Freeze, as much as we give him a hard time on this show, the one thing he has proven to do across his entire career is he's a giant slayer. And whether or not his team goes 6-6 or 5-7 like he's doing at Auburn, or winning more games like he was at Ole Miss, 8, 9, 10 wins, like he was taking out big dogs. He was losing, which he does at Auburn still. Terrible, inexcusable games. But Cal or New Mexico State, or even at Ole Miss, the Memphis game, with Chad Kelly. Like he throws some stinkers up there, but he also brings the juice when there's a big dog in town. And I expect him to do that in that game. I had Tennessee as a pivotal game, mostly just because it's Gunnar Stockton's first road start. You mentioned the playing time he saw last year was in relief of Carson Beck in the SEC title game, and then starting the Notre Dame quarterfinal game, which is a neutral site. So, I don't expect them to lose at Tennessee. We'll get to Tennessee on another show, but I could just see that, if there's going to be something wrong with Gunnar Stockton, I think Tennessee's going to have a pretty good defense, and that game will probably be at night. So you could see something crazy happen there. So that's what I put as a pivotal game, just basically to get him confidence, ideally moving forward, right? Like, okay, I'm the starter, but starting against Marshall and Austin Peay at home versus going to Knoxville, very different. So if they can get out of that with obviously a win, but even just him having a good game, a solid game that he doesn't turn the ball over, he doesn't totally lose his mind in his first big environment. I think that's, pivotal for them for the rest of the year. And then, I look around and there's losable games on there, but also all of them are winnable. It's Georgia, and their biggest games are at home. So
Yep.
I expect a good year for Georgia, and 10-2 in the SEC. They're in the playoff. I don't know how it shakes out. SEC title, we can get into that, right before the season with final predictions. But that a 10-2 Georgia's in the playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's get into a team here that Georgia has never played in their home stadium since they joined the league, and that is our Texas A&M Aggies here.
That's right.
2025 schedule here for the Aggies. They got UTSA and Utah State to start out the season, and then they have that big showdown with Notre Dame on September 13th when they head to South Bend. And then it's kind of a mixed bag here. This is it's a tough schedule in its own right. Those 3 back-to-back-to-back road games there, October 18th, the 25th, and then November 8th. You got Arkansas, LSU, and Mizzou on the road. That is a pivotal stretch right there for the Aggies. And we all know what has been going on for the last decade plus, at least, probably the last 15 years really, is that A&M is known to start hot and then the wheels fall off when it comes to November. So I'm looking here at A&M to go 9-3, and I've got their pivotal game. Their pivotal game is the Arkansas Razorbacks. You've got them going 9-3 as well, and you've got their pivotal game being the Auburn Tigers, which I think that's an interesting one as well. So, Hammer, talk me through 9-3 for the Aggies this year, how they get there, and why you like them to gain a game from last year's 8-4 finish in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to like A&M this year. Now, truthfully, based on what I have heard and what you and I have been through as Aggie fans, I think the main reason people aren't believing in A&M is simply because A&M typically fumbles the bag and ends up 8-4. Yep. I don't think it's anything personnel or staff wise that I've really heard, and the reason I say that is because I think Elko is a very good coach. It's his second year. They should be better than they were in his first year, especially in the condition that Jimbo Fisher left A&M in. So inherently, I think, they'll be slightly better just due to the staff. And there was no other staff turnover. So everybody's back, second year in a system with what I believe to be a very competent, good football coach in Elko. I think gives them a little bump. And then, if you look at really both sides of the ball, they return a lot of production. So on offense, they're returning 70% of their production, and on defense, it's 74% of their production, right? So you have Marcel Reed back. He's a full offseason now as the starter. All 5 offensive line starters are back, and two guys who saw significant time. So really their top 7 linemen are back. All 3 running backs are back. They have Le'Veon Moss returning from injury, who was all SEC a year ago, despite missing multiple games towards the end of the year in November. Amari Daniels is back, who's been a very solid workhorse for them for several years. And then Reuben Owens missed all of last year, former 5-star with an injury outside of the bowl game I think he played. So they should really be able to run the ball. Reed is dynamic with his legs. Wide receiver, certainly a question mark, but I think they're going to be able to run the ball very well. So as much as you're going to need wide receiver play to, peak to win 9 games, I don't think they have to have a great receiving core. I think they can run the ball well. And then defense, they basically return everyone except for the defensive line, right? They had a couple guys go pro. I think 3 guys drafted there. So work to do on the D line, but both the top linebackers are back. The entire secondary is back. They added guys in the transfer portal in the secondary, and then they did that as well in the D line. So, again, I'm just going to kind of trust that Elko knows what he's doing, and with all this returning production, they won 8 last year. Getting to 9 doesn't seem like that tall of a task. In terms of the pivotal game, I put on there the Auburn game. I just think you have to win that game. It's at home. It's a revenge game. I think Auburn is going to be improved over a year ago. You lost to them last year, and you're coming off a bye. So very good chance they lose at Notre Dame. I just think at home against Auburn, you can't lose that game if you're A&M. You just can't, especially if you've already lost to Notre Dame. So I put that as the pivotal game there of just, hey, get the SEC season started well, especially when you have 3 home games. I think they, would beat Mississippi State. I think they have a very good chance to beat Florida. So if you can get by Auburn to start that slate, I think there's a good chance they start 3-0. And then we'll see what they do from there. But yeah, I think I'm pretty high on A&M. No surprise as an Aggie, but I think 9-3 is reasonable given all the returning production, the staff, everything I just discussed. So
Mike agrees with you here. Aggies 9-3 in the playoff hunt, no doubt about it. I'm ready to get hurt again. That is something we say every offseason, Mike.
Yeah.
After the season ends, we are just usually crushed. And then when the season starts to roll back around, we start reading the preview magazines. We start buying all the hype. We start watching all these great throws by the quarterback in the fall camp. And then we're all the way bought back in, baby, and we're ready to get hurt again. So,
yeah.
I agree with you. I think this is the best team I've ever seen in my life. I think they're going to go 9-3.
Best 9-3 team ever. That's what everyone's saying.
Best 9-3 team that you've ever seen. You heard it here first. So I agree with everything you said. I think there was some really interesting tidbits in there that you mentioned. You also, E.J. Smith, don't forget Emmitt Smith's son. So all 4 running backs returned for the Aggies. So they have a stacked running back room, maybe one of the best in the country, if not the best. I think there's no doubt that they're a top 3 running back room in the country. I expect them to be able to stay healthy this year for the most part. You talked about that offensive line, 7 returners who come back, and you've got all the returning starters. So this should be the best line that A&M has had since 2020, and that team went 9-1 and was number 5 in the country, won the Orange Bowl, was on the verge of the college football playoff. And remember, that year, too, they had Kellen Mond. And Kellen Mond was good. He was a 3-year starter. No one ever believed that he was transcendent or the engine of that team or any of that. So Marcel Reed really just kind of needs to be a Kellen Mond, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Start handing the ball off, right? Like, he doesn't have to be incredible as a thrower. He's got to be serviceable and good and make some good throws, which Kellen Mond was able to do. But he doesn't have to be a Heisman-level quarterback this year for the Aggies to get to those 9 wins, in my opinion. And if you're looking at the holes on this team, I'm a little worried about the secondary. A bunch of people return. Will Lee's on one side at corner, but the other side is what worries me. And you've got 3 guys really who could vie for time there, and obviously some will rotate a little bit with Will Lee, but Will Lee doesn't come off the field very much, to tell you the truth. So you got Des Ricks over there at the other corner. You've got Jordan Pride, who was a starter at Washington. He's now at A&M as well. And then you also have Julian Humphrey, who comes over from Georgia. Started a bunch of games at Georgia during his career there, was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school. So, but then you have Bryce Anderson. He had a great freshman year. Hey, what's going on, Merle? That's Merle, Hammer's dog there. But he's mad about something. He didn't agree with us. He thinks that we're going to be 8-4. That's ridiculous. You need to do, yeah.
He's telling us not to drink the Kool-Aid again.
Yeah. So anyway, the secondary is what I'm worried about, but I think that Mike Elko leading this defense again and being the one who's going to be calling the defense is the difference maker. I'm not too worried about that defensive line, even though we lost a lot. The Aggies didn't lose a whole lot of production at the end of the day, and people are very excited about a lot of the names that are on that line: Ryland Kennedy, Cassius Howell, DJ Hicks, Albert Regis. There's a lot of talent on that line. I actually think they're going to be more productive this year. And so I think they're going to be able to get to 9-3. And I had their pivotal game here as that's Missouri's schedule. My bad. I got ahead of myself. The Aggies schedule here, the Arkansas Razorbacks is who I had as their pivotal game. I look at that early season schedule. The Aggies start hot. As we talked about, they typically start hot. I think A&M probably gets out of that first 6-game stretch of the season, 7-game stretch at 6-1. I think they can do it. And it's not going to be easy. Florida's good. Don't overlook that Florida game, but you get them at home. You get Auburn at home, which is nice. And that that game against Notre Dame there is going to be the most difficult one of that first stretch there. But then you got to go to Arkansas, and that one worries me. That's a game right there where Arkansas could jump up and get you. It's the first time that it's been in Fayetteville in a very, very, very long time. It was in Dallas forever. And then the one year that it wasn't, which was the COVID year, 2020, the Aggies were able to host that game in College Station. So Arkansas is going to be up for that game. You're going to be walking into a cauldron. Arkansas fans hate A&M. And if you don't win that game, then you got to start worrying about that late season slide. LSU, you got to go to Mizzou. You lost to South Carolina last year. South Carolina is not going to be easy to beat. And then you end the year in Austin. So you start looking down the road. If you lose to Arkansas, and if you're an Aggie fan, you got to be getting a little bit worried. So for me, that October 18th matchup in Fayetteville against the Hogs is that's the pivotal game for me for the Aggies.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think too, the one thing to note on that Arkansas game, outside of all the factors that you mentioned, especially just it hasn't been in Fayetteville in a hell of a long time.
Yep.
Depending on what LSU does, but most people think LSU is going to be very good. You got a pretty classic college football look-ahead game where, again, we talked about Arkansas earlier in the show. Pretty good chance Arkansas is sitting at 3-3 going into that A&M game. A&M, pretty good chance to be sitting 5-1. Arkansas does this every year, just jumps up and bites somebody, right? LSU might be top 10 team at that point, and A&M's feeling great, riding high, playing good football, and they see that LSU game on the schedule in Baton Rouge. 99% it's at night because that's the only time they play. And, we got this little game against Arkansas. That might not be a night game if Arkansas, whatever. But it'll be a hostile environment. It's a very classic college football look-ahead game where you got 18 to 22-year-olds not focused on the task at hand, looking at Twitter, looking at the schedule going, oh, man, we're going to beat LSU. And then you forget that Arkansas is actually on your schedule that week.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Bobby Petrino, man, don't overlook that guy. He got sent out of College Station after 1 year, so that he's circling that one.
The Bobby Petrino revenge game.
Yep. Bobby Motorbike, as I call him. That's my nickname for old Bobby. But I don't think that Mike Elko will make a comment like he did last year about overlooking Auburn, which he took a whole lot of heat for before the Texas game or before the Auburn game, talking about Texas. So, yeah. All right, let's get into a team here to finish us off. We're doing decent on time. We're gonna have a little bit of extra football here. We always pretty much do that on Biscuits SEC Live, but we're doing decent on time here tonight. So let's get in here to a team that the Aggies boat raced in College Station last year. That is the Missouri Tigers. They have UCA, whatever the hell that is, to open the season, and they are the first SEC game of the year. That's on August 28th, actually, I believe. So I think that August 30th might be incorrect there. But they open the season on Thursday.
Right. It is the 28th.
Yeah, so we'll fix that schedule there. But then they have an interesting game. They're reviving the border war with Kansas. Those fan bases do not like each other, so that one's an interesting game there. And then otherwise, it's an okay schedule. It's probably the easiest schedule, frankly, in the SEC overall. Most people say that. They get a bye before Alabama, which is nice. They have 6 straight home games to open the year, which is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how that's even allowed.
Yeah.
They only have 4 away games on the entire season, and those away games really aren't that. I mean, okay, Auburn's a difficult game going to Jordan-Hare. It's difficult to go to Norman. It's difficult to go to Fayetteville. But you don't see Alabama on there. You don't see LSU. You don't see Georgia. You don't see some of these really difficult environments on there, though Jordan-Hare, to be fair, is a very difficult environment to play in. So
somebody send this to Diego Pavia.
What's that? Oh, yeah,
someone
true.
Send this to Pavia. We're disrespecting the Commodore's home field advantage.
That's right. Put me on Netflix. I don't care. No problem. For Mizzou this year, I have them going 8-4. Their pivotal game is the South Carolina Gamecocks for me. Hammer's got them at 7-5 with their pivotal game being Kansas. So I think that's pretty interesting there, Hammer. You got the Kansas game, which is the second game of the year there for Mizzou, being their pivotal game on the year. So talk me through that and how you get to 7-5, which would be a pretty big step back there for Drink, who's gone back-to-back 10-win seasons with a bowl win last year, 9-3 in the regular season.
Yeah, so I'll just start with the Kansas thing just to get that out of the way. It's a renewed rivalry.
Yeah.
Missouri doesn't have – I mean, I know they're sort of the Arkansas thing, but they don't really have a SEC rival. Sure. And So I look at their SEC slate, and there's probably more like pivotal games in terms of what it means for their season. If they lose in week 2 to Kansas, I don't think they will, but if they did, it's not the end of the world, right? They have plenty of time to get things right. And obviously, their SEC schedule is untouched. I just think it means a lot to those fans. If you're an older Missouri fan, you hate Kansas.
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose to them. And I think that would get their season off to a very sour note, especially with the SEC slate still to come if they were to lose to Kansas. I know Kansas under Leipold is better. This is very similar to how SEC fans view Vanderbilt. They're better under Clark Lee and with Pavi. We saw that last year. Everyone's still chalking Vanderbilt up as a W this year. We know that. Same with Kansas. Are they better under Leipold than they were? Absolutely. Everybody, especially a team like Missouri, is chalking that up as a W. So I just think it means a lot to the fan base. And so I think it's pivotal for them, to get that win and get things started on the right foot. I think that could leave a very sour taste in Tiger fans' mouths if they lost. How I got to 7-5, I do think they're going to take a step back. Especially on offense. I think their defense is actually going to be really good. Again, they were good last year despite losing Blake Baker. Drink seems to do a fantastic job of, A, making good hires, but B, pulling guys in the portal on defense, including the what's the Georgia guy that they pulled in?
Damon Wilson. Wilson Jr.
Damon Wilson. So I expect him to have a good year. That was a big get in the transfer portal. So I think Mizzou's defense will be good. I worry about the offense. The returning production, they're 44%, 101st in the country. We know they lost Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss. I think they're going to be able to run the ball pretty well. I don't know if I trust their weapons or quarterback for that matter. I mean, you never know anymore, especially when you're bringing in transfers, but sort of the opposite end of the spectrum with what we said about Alabama earlier, about how Ty Simpson stayed the course. Kalen DeBoer didn't bring in a transfer quarterback this cycle. Seemed like, there was good vibes there. Well, Missouri has Sam Horn on campus quite a while. Drink decides to go get Bo Pribula out of the portal, and they haven't named a starter. It's presumed to be Pribula, but what I'm seeing out of camp is Sam Horn is pushing him.
Yeah.
So that when I just look at that, you think, okay, well, if you wanted to improve your quarterback room by getting this guy and he's not beating out the guy you were trying to replace, then where does that leave us? So that's what I worry about is I think Brady Cook was really good, especially for a team like Missouri. I think he was a dog. He was a competitor. He was a leader. They believed in him, and they lost him. You lose a guy as talented as Burden. I just worry about their offense. And so I think they probably take a decent step back and go 7-5. However, Missouri fans, if 7-5 is a step back, then you guys are in a great place because that's not been the case for a lot of your tenure in the SEC. You had some great years under Pinkel in the Big 12, but in the SEC, if 7-5 is a step back, then you're in a very good place.
That's true, especially even in Drink's tenure. He had a tough time breaking through the 500 mark. He was 6-6 for a couple of years there. And then he finally gets up and he hits that 11-win mark, gets a bowl win over Ohio State, and now we're rolling, right? And then last year, 9-3 regular season, get a bowl win to go 10-3. So Drink is a very good coach, and that is why, for me, I got to at least 8-4. I do think they take a little bit of a step back here, but I just think that I just trust Drink at this point. I think that he has gotten the roster to a place now, even with all these transfers coming in, even with everything that they lost, that hey, it's just like if I'm a Mizzou fan, trust Drink. I think he's going to be able to get this team ready and ready to go to get him up to 8 wins. So I agree with you. The defense, I think, is going to be very solid. Again, they had a couple of stinkers last year. A&M absolutely rocked them. Alabama absolutely rocked them. But for the most part, they were a pretty solid unit for most of the year. I think they'll be a solid unit again this year. They had to replace a couple folks, especially I believe they had a couple in the secondary that they had to replace. But overall, I think they're going to be go ahead.
Couple of starting safeties.
Yes, that's right.
They lost.
But the big questions are on the offense, and you hit all of it, so I don't need to harp on it too much. But You lost all those receivers. So what does that mean? A ton of your production on offense was lost. And so the one thing that you didn't mention that I would just note for fans to be on the lookout for, especially in the first couple weeks, especially in that Kansas game right there, when you play a Power 4 opponent from the Big 12, 3 starters were lost from last year's team. So they graduated, no longer on the team. 3 starters are gone for Missouri's offensive line. So whoever the starter ends up being and the running back room, right, it's going to be, I think it's Ahmad Hardy is expected to be running back.
Yeah, ULM transfer.
ULM.
All Sun Belt last year as a freshman.
Yeah, so he should be a good running back, and they've done a very good job bringing kids in from the portal in order to really make that running back room go. Drink has done a great job at that. So is the offensive line breaking in 3 new starters good enough to get that push and good enough to get 100 yards a game type of thing from Ahmad Hardy, 100 yards plus? And then are they able to, in pass pro, protect either Bo Pribula or Sam Horn, whoever the starter ends up being? I wouldn't be surprised either if in that first game that we actually see both of those quarterbacks at some point. We're kind of getting to that point where it's like, okay, if we're not going to name a starter, we may see Drink come out in the press conference and say this one is going to go into week 2, and we're going to have the competition through week 1 to see how these kids respond in game.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at that offensive line. That's my big question here, because I think they're replacing so much on offense, and I want to see if that offensive line replacing those starters is going to be able to protect those quarterbacks and then also get the push that they need in order to have a solid run game this season. And I think a lot hinges on that for Missouri. But again, I just trust Drink. I think he's the man for the job. My pivotal game for them was South Carolina. Those fan bases don't like each other. Those teams don't like each other. And South Carolina there, your 4th game of the year, I think it kind of sets you up for the rest of the year. I have a feeling they're going to probably beat Kansas. So I think you're 3-0 heading into the South Carolina game. You don't want South Carolina to come into your house and beat you. You want to get out of that 6-game home stretch to start the season, probably with just 1 loss, expecting that loss to be Alabama. So if you can do that and you can get to 5-1 coming out of that stretch, you got to feel really good, because your schedule here is backloaded. Even though it's, you got a couple of home games still left and you have, 8 home games and 4 away games, then your schedule starts to heat up once you get Auburn. Vanderbilt's not a gimme. Then you got A&M, you got Oklahoma, and then Arkansas to end the year. So if you can get through that early stretch there, you can beat South Carolina, be 5-1, most likely with that loss coming to Alabama. But you also got to feel good about the Alabama game, because you got to bye and you get them at home. So who knows? So I just trust Drink. I think he's going to be able to get them to 8-4. Slight step back this year, but I think the Missouri program overall is in a very good place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the schedule, it's doable for them to get to 8 for sure.
Agreed. All right. We went overtime a little bit tonight, as we do typically, but that's because we just love talking ball here at Biscuits and SEC Live. We've got about 100 of you watching here tonight, so we appreciate all of you joining us. Quickly, before we get to our last 2 segments of the night, our Muschamp Coach of the Week and then our Biscuit of the Week, we have a big interview coming up that we are very, very excited about. Jay Busby, the national writer for Yahoo Sports. He writes on college football, senior writer for Yahoo Sports, writes on college football, writes on a couple other sports as well. In fact, when we do the interview, he's going to be covering the Tour Championship. But we're going to pre-record that interview coming up next week. I think we're going to record it on Monday. And then likely we're going to play it during our live next Wednesday. So the first half of the show will likely be our interview with Jay Busby. He wrote a book called Iron in the Blood. We encourage all of you to check it out. He gave us an advanced copy. I think we're probably going to do a contest here as well, because we're coming up on our 50th show of Biscuits and SEC Live. So likely to have a contest for you guys to win a copy of that book. And we're figuring out the details on that right now. So stay tuned for that. If we don't do it, depends on the news next week. If we're going to do that during the live show on Wednesday, or if we just release it at a different time with some clips, et cetera. It'll all be based on next week's news. If there's a lot of big news, if we have another Blackjack Mateer situation, the Busby interview may have to be a standalone. But our idea right now is to play it on our live show. So we want to thank Jay Busby for reaching out to us. We're very excited to do that interview here on Biscuits and SEC Live. So with that, let's get into here our Biscuit of the Week, and then we'll do our Must Champ Coach of the Week to end the show. Hammer, help me out. Biscuit of the Week. This was yours this week, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so I went out on Sunday morning, I think it was. Sunday morning, to a local spot, just a mile or two away from my house. LaPorte, Colorado is a little town just outside of Fort Collins, and got some sweet potato hash, and of course, just ordered a biscuit on the side. It was pretty good. I think this place is better known for their actual pies. They were selling legitimate pies, entire pies by the slice there. The biscuit was good, but without it being like a biscuit-centric meal, it wasn't a sandwich, wasn't biscuits and gravy, there wasn't anything else going on. It was literally just a biscuit, as you can see, with jelly and butter. So for what it was, tasty, solid biscuit, but not a whole lot, really to it. But I would recommend it if you're ever up here. It's a good spot, good coffee, and solid biscuits from Me Oh My Coffee and Pie.
Okay, man, that sweet potato hash there, that does look good. You're starting to be like Rick, our friend Rick here, man. He's super healthy. We have featured Rick's biscuits on here a couple times. He's got some vegan biscuits going on. This isn't to that level there, Hammer, but you're getting there. But we respect you for eating healthy. That's a good thing. That biscuit looks decent. There's probably better biscuits in the South, but 2 ho-hum reviews here in the last 2 weeks.
Definitely.
We need to get back on the high horse here and get back to some really good biscuits. So
we do.
We would love to feature y'all's biscuits here. DM us your biscuits to be featured on the show. You can DM us at Biscuits and SEC across all platforms. That's Instagram, X, or Facebook. And you can also send them to us, contact@biscuitsandsec.com. Our friend Mike Huseman sent us one in a couple of weeks ago, and I need to get a few more details on that, and we need to feature that one here soon. All right. Finally, I've got a 1A and 1B here for our Must Champ Coach of the Week, so we will do this quickly. Kenny Dillingham has won this award, I believe, 2 or 3 times, and I almost gave it to him again this week because that guy is just a quote machine. He has been killing me. They had the Arizona State fall camp, and they typically do it, I guess, off-site, so it almost looks like it was at a boys camp, like a summer camp for kids. But they had s'mores, they had bonfire time, all this, and Kenny Dillingham had a quote to the media saying that he had stolen a s'more because no one had given him one. And as the head coach, he doesn't have enough time to do all those things and have all the fun. So before one of the practices, he stole a s'more. So I almost gave it to him, but I decided to go a different direction here. This is our Must Champ Coach of the Week, and then I will show you the runner-up.
Well, what we do here at Arkansas, our policy is when we're in padded practices, we wear knee braces. Games are optional. So if they want to wear them in games or they don't want to wear them in games, it's up to them. But when we're in padded practices, we wear them. When we're in non-padded, we don't. If you're asking my personal opinion on it, let's not try to light the world on fire. I think of the movie Forrest Gump, okay? You got little Forrest. He's got these braces on, right? And he's been told, man, you're slow, stiff walker, right? And then the boys start chasing him, and those knee braces pop off, and he's the fastest thing in Alabama. So that's my belief, as I think they're a little restrictive, and we're already the worst athletes on the field, so I would like to not make that even more so.
That's Eric Mateos, the offensive line coach for the Hogs. He great quote. By the way, a great movie quote, much better than Dave Aranda's quote from a couple weeks ago when he won Must Champ Coach of the Week.
Yeah.
Read that in better, much easier to understand. So that was a fun little quote there from Eric Mateos. So he is our Must Champ Coach of the Week.
Maybe I'm rethinking my 5 and 7 now. They might be 6 and 6. They're gonna their linemen are gonna be flying around the field.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Watch out for the Hogs up front there in Fayetteville. All right, this is our 1B, and I saw this and I had to play it.
This guy's going to Alabama. This one's going to Florida. This one's going to Texas A&M. This one has 20 offers, and we got a bunch of pie caps and Fijis. They're going to be tackling the guys that they're going to be cheering for in a year or two.
That's Robert Evans, the head coach at Vestavia Hills High School in Alabama. And what a great quote. I was actually one of those playing football in my day. I went up against multiple kids who ended up going D1. And I remember looking across the line and being like, absolutely not am I going to be able to tackle that guy. And I ended up being in a fraternity as well. So I was one of Robert Evans's players. And I just thought that quote was hilarious. So props to Robert Evans. Didn't win Must Champ Coach of the Week, but gets the runner-up award. And we'll be sure to send him maybe a Nerds rope or something.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We'll send him some letters, fraternity T-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe we can do that. So, okay, that is going to do it here for us. A little bit of extra football here, Biscuits and SEC Live. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We do appreciate it. Please go and check out the rest of the shows on the After Dark Network. You got Offseason After Dark with our friend Mike Huseman. That comes out typically Tuesdays in the morning, so you can listen to it on your drive to work. I was on the most recent episode with Mike previewing the Texas A&M Aggies, so be sure to go check that one out. We actually went for almost 2 hours, so that was a really fun show, and previewing everything Texas A&M and also talking a little bit about the rest of the SEC in terms of the quarterbacks and the coaches. You got us every Wednesday here, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. SEC After Dark, be sure to join us tomorrow night, Thursdays at 9 Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. And then Jake Thomas, I was on there last night watching his show. He does a great job there at Bama After Dark on Tuesdays, 6:30 Eastern. And then also go check out the Regular Guys pod. That is Corey Burton and Ismail. I think I'm saying his name wrong. Israel Troop, former Georgia player. They talk all things football. Israel is now a high school football coach there in Georgia. And so they talk all things football and then go a little bit off the rails, talking a little bit about movies, pop culture, anything that they decide that they want to talk about that week. So please go check out those shows. As always, please sign up for the Morning Biscuits newsletter. You can sign up for that, biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter. It is free to sign up, written by myself and Hammer every single week. Wednesdays, it comes out to you in the off season. So Hammer wrote it this morning, had a lot of great tidbits in there about what is going on around the SEC. And we are about to get to our in-season cadence, which means Mondays and Fridays, the Morning Biscuits newsletter will be coming to you just because there is so much news flying around when it is football season. So we are looking forward next week to that Jay Busby interview. And please go and subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that bell for the notifications. We're trying to grow our channel over at Biscuits and SEC on YouTube. So please go and subscribe there. Make sure that you never miss an episode every Wednesday night here at 6 o'clock Central. So for Hammer, I am Boss Man. Thank you guys for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow night for SEC After Dark.
Appreciate y'all.